Christmas Eve, 1971. Row 19. The girl is 17. The roof tears away. She falls, still strapped in, 3 kilometers above the Amazon. 92 people were aboard Lancer Flight 508 that evening. 91 of them died. What no one could explain, not immediately, not fully, even now, was how a teenage girl with no tools, no radio, and no shelter survived not just that fall, but 11 days alone in one of the most hostile ecosystems on the planet. Nobody could account for it. The odds had no name. Lancer, Líneas Aéreas Nacional Sociedad Anónima, was a Peruvian domestic carrier with a paper trail of safety violations that regulators had seen, documented, and done nothing about. Flight 508 had left Lima heading east toward Pucallpa, at the edge of the jungle basin. Christmas Eve. Packed flight. Most of the people aboard were going home. Julianne Koepke was 17. She was traveling with her mother, Maria, a German ornithologist who had spent years studying birds in the Amazonian interior. Julianne had grown up partly at a remote biological research station her parents had built in the jungle. She knew the sounds the forest made at night. She knew which shapes in the water to step around and which to ignore. She did not know that she was about to need every single piece of that knowledge. The storm appeared without warning. A cumulonimbus formation, the kind that can tower 15 kilometers into the atmosphere and carry enough charge to shear metal, consumed the aircraft at cruising altitude. Lightning struck the port wing. The wing caught fire. Within seconds, explosive decompression tore the fuselage apart. Julianne was ejected still seated, still buckled in. She was at roughly 10,000 feet when the plane disintegrated around her. She fell through cloud, through rain, through open darkness. She lost consciousness before she reached the canopy. What happened next was reconstructed later by aeronautical engineers and biologists. The seat row she was strapped into appears to have rotated slowly as it fell, a phenomenon sometimes called autorotation, creating just enough drag to reduce terminal velocity. The Amazonian canopy, layered and dense in some sections to 60 meters, absorbed the final impact across a gradual sequence of branches rather than a single strike. None of this was planned. None of it was reliable. It simply, improbably, worked. She woke the next morning on the jungle floor. One eye was swollen shut from the pressure change. Her collarbone was broken. Her right upper arm had a deep laceration. She was wearing a short sleeveless dress and one sandal. The temperature was already rising toward 35 degrees. Around her, the Amazon was awake and indifferent. She had no way of knowing whether her mother had survived. She couldn't hear anything except the jungle closing in around her. She got up and moved. She found a small stream on the first day. This was not instinct. It was instruction. Her father, the zoologist Hans Wilhelm Koepke, had told her years earlier, casually, almost offhandedly, in the jungle, if you find water, follow it downstream. Moving water leads to larger water. Larger water leads to people. She had listened. Now she followed the stream. She walked. The white floral dress she was wearing offered nothing against insects. The broken collarbone meant she could not properly use her right arm and could not swim for any distance. In the wreckage near where she had landed, she found a small bag of sweets, hard candy, the kind sold in airports. For the next 11 days, that was the entirety of her food supply. On the third day, she found 3 other survivors. Still strapped in their seats, suspended in the upper canopy where they had come to rest. Alive. Unable to move. She climbed up to them. She spoke to them. She told them she would bring help. I've thought about this part more than any other in this story. She found people alive. She made them a promise. And then, because she physically could not carry them, because there was no other option, she walked away. They were dead before any rescue team reached them. In every interview Julianne has given across 50 years, the interviewers ask about the maggots. Almost none of them ask what it cost her to leave those 3 people in the trees. The terrain she was crossing was not jungle in any cinematic sense, not a green, navigable space with occasional danger. The Peruvian Amazon at that latitude is a closed thermal system. Heat and moisture create a permanent canopy so thick that in some areas sunlight barely penetrates. The ground is uneven, root-crossed, waterlogged in sections, dry and cracked in others. The insects are constant. She walked through it in one sandal for 11 days. Her mother Maria had also survived the initial fall. She was discovered later, still alive when found, but with catastrophic internal injuries she had sustained on impact. She died before she could be evacuated. Julianne would not learn this until she was out of the jungle. On the 9th day, Julianne found a motorboat moored at the edge of a wider river. Near it, a rough camp, a shelter, basic supplies, a canister of fuel. She waited. By this point, the laceration on her right arm had become severely infested. The humid heat had allowed fly larvae to colonize the wound. She remembered something her father had once described in the field: petrol kills maggots on contact. She poured the fuel into the wound and waited. 37 maggots emerged. She later said she counted them as they came out, one by one, because counting felt like control. She waited at the camp for 2 more days. On the 11th day, 3 local lumber workers arrived to collect their boat. They found a teenage girl in a torn dress, alone, wound freshly treated, sitting in their camp. They later said she appeared to them like a spirit of the forest. They cleaned her injuries, fed her, and the following morning took her by canoe downriver to the nearest village. From there, a small aircraft flew her to a hospital in Pucallpa. She had been in the jungle 11 days. She had walked approximately 60 kilometers on broken bones with one shoe. The investigation into Flight 508 confirmed what regulators had long suspected: Lancer had been flying aircraft with unresolved maintenance issues and had falsified inspection records. 2 years before Flight 508, the same airline had lost another plane, also in the Amazon, also with mass casualties. 99 dead. Lancer had looked at that number and kept selling tickets. The crash of Flight 508 finally shut them down in 1972. That detail matters because this story is so often framed purely as a survival story, one extraordinary girl against nature. But 91 people didn't die because the Amazon is dangerous. They died because someone signed off on a plane that shouldn't have been flying. The jungle was just where the consequences landed. But the question that the investigators could not file into any report was the one everyone was actually asking: why her? Werner Herzog, the German filmmaker, had been booked on a Lancer flight during that same period, not Flight 508, but a different route. A scheduling change had moved his seat. He spent years thinking about what that meant. In 2000, he traveled with Julianne back to the crash site in the jungle to make a documentary he called Wings of Hope. He said that what stayed with him most was not the drama of the survival. It was how quietly she spoke about it. There was no performance of heroism. She described 11 days of decisions, most of them small, many of them made before she ever boarded the plane. Julianne Cope became a zoologist, like her parents. She specialized in bats. She returned to Peru and eventually took over the running of the same biological research station her parents had established, the Panguana Station, deep in the Ucayali region, in the same jungle she had walked out of. She published her memoir, When I Fell from the Sky, in 2011. She has returned to the crash site multiple times. The wreckage is still there. The jungle is slowly absorbing it. In interviews across 5 decades, she has never claimed that surviving was a function of willpower or courage in any dramatic sense. She has said something more unsettling and more true, that she survived because her parents had, without any particular plan, given her the right information at the right time in the right place. She was a child who had been raised inside the thing that was trying to kill her. When the plane broke apart, the jungle was the only world she knew. The Amazon does not forgive. It is not designed for human passage. But for 11 days, for one girl in a torn white dress, it opened a path. She followed it downstream, the way her father had told her to. And she walked out. If you want more stories like this, the ones history almost swallowed, subscribe to ChaMedia. We find them every week.